everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be creating a project inspired by complementary colors and creating space with shapes. This project was made for grade 5s and I used the Ontario Visual Arts curriculum. But if you are teaching grade 6 or if you are a teacher that does not live in Ontario, I'm sure you could tweak this project to what works best for you and your students. I included a little lesson on complementary colors and creating distance with shapes, so you're more than welcome to use that as part of your lesson in your classroom. So without further ado, let's get into it. The elements of design we will be looking at are color, shape, and space. Let's start out with color, specifically contrasting colors. What are contrasting colors, and how can we use them in an art piece? Let's start out by defining contrast. Contrast is when two elements are opposite from each other. Just like big is the opposite of small, and light is the opposite of dark. Contrasting colors are opposites, meaning they sit across from each other on the color wheel. For example, red and green sit across from each other on the color wheel. That means that they're opposite colors and they're also contrasting colors. So are orange and blue, and yellow and purple. These little groups are called complementary colors. Why are they called complementary colors? Well, because they complement each other. When you use them next to each other in a painting, they actually make each other pop and they bring each other out. So if you're making an art piece and you really want something to stand out and pop, you should use high contrast, such as complementary colors. Let's take another look at the color wheel. What else can you see that's opposite? If you cut the color wheel in half, you get warm colors and cool colors. Picture yourself on a beach watching the sunset. The sky is filled with oranges, reds, and yellows, and the sun is bright yellow and it's hot. These are your warm colors. Now look down towards the water. It's filled with blues, purples, and greens. These are your cool colors. Warm and cool colors are opposites, and they're also high in contrast. Oh, look! There's our complementary colors, green and red, blue and orange, and purple and yellow. It looks like each pair has one cool color and one warm color. Now let's take a look at shape and space. When we're creating an art piece and we want to show that there's a long distance, how can we make something look like it's farther away? And how can we make something look like it's close up? Just a side note, my cat Ralphie decided that he wanted to help us today, so please don't mind his little paws that pop in and out of frame throughout this part of the video. So back to the lesson. Let's take a look out the window. Now, what do you notice about objects that you see that are closer to you? And what do you notice about the objects that you see that are farther away? The objects that are closest to you will appear to be larger in size, and the objects that are farther away will appear to be smaller, and that's how we can create the illusion of distance in an art piece. Just like in this example, the larger tree appears to be closer to us, almost like we can reach out and touch it. But the tree that's smaller in size appears to be far out into the distance. What else do you notice about these trees? The one that is closest to us appears that it has a lot more detail. Take a look at the trunk. There's a lot of lines and variations in shading and color. You can see the same thing in the leaves. There's a lot of different details, there's shading, you can see some of the individual leaves. So there's a lot more detail happening in the tree that is closer to us. But when we look at the tree that appears to be far, far away from us, there aren't as many details that we can see. There are no lines in the trunk, and there aren't as many different colors in the leaves. The reason I'm making the tree that is close to us a lot more detailed than the one that is far away from us is because when you look out the window, you can see a lot more detail in the objects that are close to you. We as humans can't really see that far into the distance. We can't see a lot of details in things that are far away. So using the technique of making things a lot more detailed that are close to you in a picture or a drawing actually makes it look a lot more realistic. And it helps us understand that there is a long distance there. You're actually creating more distance by not including as many details in the things that are far away. It's almost time to start painting, but before we begin, let's do a little review. Today, we've learned that the complementary contrasting colors are red with green, orange with blue, and yellow with purple. Warm colors contrast with cool colors. Objects that are close to you appear to be larger, and objects that are far away appear to be smaller. And lastly, objects that are close to you have more detail, but objects that are far away from you have less detail. Get your paintbrushes ready because it's time to create. The materials you'll need are watercolor paper, watercolor paints, paintbrushes, crayons, pencils, chalk pastels, and markers. Today we will be creating this outer space scene using lots of contrasting colors and wide distances between all of our planets. Start out with your piece of watercolor paper in front of you. It's optional to tape down the edges, and this helps with keeping the page nice and flat as we watercolor, and it also will give us a nice border in the end when we peel the tape off. Take a crayon in a warm color, so I'm using orange, and start creating different sizes of circles. So these will be our planets, and we're making all of these different sizes because some of the planets will be close to us and some planets will be far, far away from us. Make sure you create a variety of different sizes. So you'll have some large planets, some medium-sized planets, and small planets. Now it's time to create our galaxy. So take your watercolor paints and find all of the cool colors. So that would be the blues, purples, and greens. Now I'm adding a little bit of paint to different sections of my paper, and then I'm going to take a wet paintbrush. So I'm going to dip my paintbrush in water, and then I'm going to start blending out my paint. And I'm going in kind of a diagonal motion with my paint, and I keep wetting my paintbrush. So I dip it in water and then I blend a little bit of paint. And keeping our paintbrush wet and using lots of water when we're blending our watercolor paint is going to help the watercolor paint blend into the paper and create lots of different fun swirls and blends as you paint. So keep on dipping your paintbrush in water and keep mixing the water into the paint as you blend, and it'll start to look like a swirly whirly galaxy. Now, once your piece is all covered in paint, take a little bit of white paint and mix water into it to dilute it and make it a little more watery. Then you can take your paintbrush, hold it over your canvas, and lightly tap it with your other hand, and that'll create little white paint splatters on your canvas, and it'll look like stars in the distance of your galaxy, almost like the Milky Way. All right, so now our background of cool toned colors in our galaxy is done. And so now we are going to use contrasting colors for our planets. So those would be all of the warm tone colors. So we have colors like red, orange, and yellow. So remember what we said about complementary colors and how the contrast makes them stand out against each other. Well, this is how we are going to make our planets really stand out in our galaxy. They're really going to pop against the opposite colors in the background. So here I am putting different little blobs of red and yellow on my planets, and then I'm slowly going to blend them out in any way that I want to. And this is your time to be creative. You can blend them however you want, and I'm mixing red and yellow to make orange, so there's a lot of different warm color variations in my planets. So you can have fun with blending and using all of the different warm colors that you want to use. And now that all of my planets are complete, I'm adding a quick little last minute little splash of white to enhance some of those stars. Our painting stage is complete, and so now we have to wait for this painting to dry all the way, and then we can start the next step. So now it's time to add some details and decorate our planets. So take a warm toned marker. I'm using orange, and you can do little patterns on your planets. You can decorate them however you'd like. Keep in mind what we said about objects that are close to you have more details. So the largest planets that you made will have the most detail, and the medium-sized ones, you can do some smaller details on those, and the smallest planets, you can leave them as they are, and that will make them look like they are farther away. Our last step is to make these planets look like they are glowing in outer space. So let's take a chalk pastel, and you are going to draw around each of the planets, and then with your finger start to blend in that chalk, and it'll start to look like the planets are glowing. And there we have it. There is our completed galaxy painting using contrasting colors and creating space. Thank you so much for creating with me today, and if you used this with your class, I'd love to know how it went, so please leave me a comment below, and also comment what you'd like me to do in the future. If you're teaching a specific grade and you'd like me to create a project for that grade, please let me know, and like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!